Well, Racing Rant on tour, here we are, and we've finally caught up with our Brisbane Mounting Yard mailman, Nick Meredith.
Mark.
Finally.
Nick. Good. Thanks, guys. Welcome to Brisbane.
Yeah, it couldn't be a better welcome, and we're really pleased to finally drill down into the man behind the Mounting Yard Mail.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, Nick, you look like you've been around horses for a fair while.
Yeah, a long time. Much to my parents' disgust. I started, I lived on the Sunshine Coast and I used to catch the train every Friday night. My grandfather would pick me up after an hour on the train and we'd go off to the races. That started when I was about 15.
Right.
So he got me hooked at a very early age.
And that was the great old days where you could actually go up to a bookmaker and have a bet when you were 15.
Well, you could, and it was my little dollar each way and that sort of thing. It was good fun. But we used to go to Redcliffe Trots on a Friday night and then we'd go off to Brisbane on a Saturday. He wasn't a big punter, but he loved the game. So
it's a great little start, isn't it?
He got me hooked on it, for sure. And look,
it's even better doing it with Grandad, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, it was awesome. Yeah, and my mum and dad were never into it. No, he was the only family member that was, but he got me hooked, absolutely. And he loved it. And he basically kept going until he could go no longer. So it was good, yeah.
And you did have a bit of a famous soccer career. So how did the racing fit with the soccer?
It was difficult. I got into playing football when I was 6 years old and sort of played professionally for 14 years. So, but that took me to Newcastle and then on to Sydney. But all the time I was in Newcastle and Sydney, I was going to the races as well. So
it sort of fits in pretty well, doesn't it?
It does.
You've got downtime.
Yeah, well, it was handy because most of our games were on a Sunday, which meant I could go to the races on a Saturday. And you always loved if you got a Friday night game because you beauty will go to the races Saturday and.
Yeah, and there's no worry about what you might get up to.
There was a few of us that a couple of times went to Rose Hill with disguises on because we had a game that night and we knew we shouldn't be at the races. So spent a couple of golden slippers with funny hats on and things like that. So, but yeah, look, I loved my time at the races in Sydney. Learned a lot in Sydney. Yeah, learned a lot off my grandfather, I guess. Mainly he was the person that taught me initially. He wasn't a big punter or anything, but he spent a lot of time looking at horses. He loved horses, so yeah.
And what about you looking at horses? Were you picking up from him?
I think it just comes over time. I never, when I was younger and playing football, I never took it that seriously. I kept an eye. I would look at a horse before the race. Always go and look at horses before the race. Didn't like betting on a race that I hadn't looked at them. And you get to know, and I think the biggest thing is repetition. You get to see the same horses week in, week out, and that sort of thing.
That's massive.
Oh, it's huge, and you know you can. To me, I look at them like they're an athlete. So, and Chris Muntz, I'll be honest, taught me a little bit about this as well in the last few years. He goes, well, what does that horse look like? If it's a football, it looks like a front rower. You don't want that in a running race, do you? So he taught me a lot there. So I look for athletes, and you know, it's the same as you see an athlete go out onto a football field. Some guys look like they're a better athlete than others, and that's the way I look at it. And interesting to hear a lot of what Glenn said actually about sweating up and things like that. I'm the same. I don't take it as seriously as some others. To me, I look at footballers, and I know some footballers that would be a lather of sweat before a game, but it didn't. So it didn't inhibit
that's a fantastic point.
It didn't inhibit their performance. I think they're individuals, athletes, and if a horse is a regular sweater, well, let it sweat.
So what? You're sitting there ready to go out, and some guys are dripping.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And why are they sweating?
Oh, look, I think it's just their physical makeup. Like I've seen guys, you go out and have a warm up even on a cold day, and they'd come in and their shirt would be a lather of sweat. It didn't affect their performance at all. It's just their physical makeup. So yeah, I look at it that way, but I predominantly look for what I think is the best athlete in the race, and obviously mannerisms as well.
So what about if it's carrying a bit of weight?
Distance is really relevant there, obviously.
Okay.
1,000 metres doesn't really worry me too much at all.
So you're referencing humans again? It's like...
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you look at an African distance runner. They're a completely different build to a 100-metre sprinter. Yeah. So, you know, horses for courses on that sort of thing, you look for... Well, I do anyway. I mean, I think everyone's a little bit different, but you like to see a sprinter, 1,000-metre, be a little bit shorter, compact, sturdier looking thing. And Impending was a good example the other week. Now, he was certainly nowhere near his top, but he was certainly fit enough and athletic enough to get that distance, no problem at all. But if he was going to 1,600, I don't think he would have been a factor at all because he just wasn't ready for that.
Yeah.
So,
And what does that say for tomorrow then?
Well, you'd hope to have seen good improvement. Since I've been looking at the horses around, James Cummings is sensational condition of horses. They always present fantastically, even before he went to Godolphin. Last year when I was doing some stuff with Paul up here in Brisbane, and he bought a few horses up, Guree horses and that, and they were he bought a horse up called Good Standing, which was clearly the standout of the carnival. And I think they were betting 3 to 1, 7 to 2. And you looked at it in the yard, it was $1.10. And you just get those edges every now and then. But he's a fantastic conditioner, so I would imagine that horse would have improved significantly.
Okay.
Yeah. But it would still have some left because I think Stradbroke's the main goal.
Yeah.
So you've talked about knowing the horses and seeing the horses week in, week out, but I guess there's the behind the horses, isn't there? You've just touched on Cummings and how he prepares horses. So obviously you need to have some sort of profile of each trainer and
absolutely
and marry that with what you're seeing in the horse.
It's not just one variable, isn't it? You do need to link certain things. Like I'm interested in a circumstance where a horse doesn't parade well but is racing well, and then it parades really well, because I get an inkling that are we giving that a big tick or not? Because you
certainly can't make it a negative. I mean, if it's improved physically, there's no reason it should run poorly. There's some trainers in Brisbane that without seeing the saddle cloth or the number, it walks in the yard and you'll go, oh, that's Les Ross's horse.
Yeah.
And you think, geez, can someone please feed it? You know, there's just some stables you think, bloody hell, the poor horse needs a feed. But he's got another horse running around at the moment called River Racer, which bolted in at Doomben the other week. It's come in and everyone's gone, someone's taken over Les's horses. It looked magnificent. So, big profile on trainers. There's I suppose it's a bit derogatory, but there's not many trainers in Brisbane that you think, geez, they condition their horses really well all the time.
And Glenn talks about feed and stuff like that. That's something you focus on as well, as far as
It's interesting, I was having a chat to Tony Gollan about it the other week at the races, and all of a sudden, to me, his horses have started to look really good. Okay. And I said, Tony, they look outstanding at the moment. He said, I think it's something different, and he was quite open. He said, I think it's something different in the Mitavite feed. They've actually changed the feed slightly, and he said, all my horses suddenly are looking a lot better.
Wow.
So it's interesting, but I think that was one of the keys with Cummings. I think he had the reputation as one of the best feeders and that sort of thing. So
but you've dabbled in ownership yourself, so that's obviously giving you another insight into the makeup of the game. What got you into owning horses?
I think I've always wanted to own one, and then I was in a position where I could buy. I got some mates involved, and we got a few shares in. I think at one stage I had 5.
So it wasn't like Zelko Callett and Craig Moore?
No, they didn't get me. No, they didn't get me into buffering, which was pretty disappointing. Thanks, boys. Spider didn't go too well out of that, though he had to sell before it won a Group 1. But what a disaster for him. But I enjoyed it for the first couple of years. I probably don't enjoy it now as much as I did at first. And typical as this, I got one that goes all right, and he's managed to hurt himself. So,
well, I must say that was the day we met you at Lismore, and the horse was expected to win. It was well into the red, and I've never seen someone so excited to see. Obviously there was sort of like waves of relief and excitement.
The day was an absolute. I'll give you a rundown a bit of time. Muncie sent the horse down with the truck driver and no one else. So half an hour out of Lismore, they had a blowout. So the horse had been backed from, I think, $2.60 into about $1.60. So it was backed all around the joint.
It was telegraphed, yeah.
Yeah, it was. And so Muncie rings me and he goes, are they there yet? And at this stage, the first race is going out, and he's in the second. And I said, no. And he said, hang on, I'll ring them up. And he said, they're on the way. They had a blowout. So can you give Angelo a help unloading the horse? I said, yeah, no worries. So I run over there, and they've sent a pony down with it. The pony he sent with it was a complete fucking nutcase. Wanted to kick everything. So I'm standing in the parking lot at Lismore. The first race is going, and I'm holding on to this horse. It's a $1.40 chance, and I'm looking at him going, if you bolt, there's not much I'm going to be able to do about this. So we eventually got into the stalls. We walked in, and the racecourse people are there, and he goes, what horse, mate? And you go, yeah, Washington Street. And you go, you better hurry up, hadn't you? I said, yeah. So go and grab the saddle and that, and Angelo goes, can you help me saddle him up? I said, mate, I've never saddled up a racehorse. He goes, you stand on the other side and I'll tell you what to do.
How many punters knew
I know,
this?
and I'm thinking...
Oh, but the funny thing is, if I heard that, I'm laying
Everyone's laying off. Everyone's laying off. So he's passing things over to me, and I'm putting the things in where he tells me, and then he goes, oh, shit, you've got to start again. And I'm looking at my watch going, they're starting a parade. I'm going, oh, no. So we finally get the saddle on, and then he goes... I said, isn't he supposed to be wearing winkers? And he goes, oh, shit, put the winkers on. So put the winkers on, and then he goes, Muncie rings me up and he goes, tell Ronnie Stewart, just go to the lead. Lismore got to be on the fence. I said, Ronnie, Muncie, he says, yeah, I know, don't worry about it, all that sort of thing. And he goes, can you leg me up? I said, oh, yeah, right. So I leg him up, and the horse wins. But if you notice, and I was terrified on the day, he comes down the straight, I think it was about 4 in front, and then he starts going left, which you don't want to do at Lismore. The winker had come loose and had gone across his eye, so he couldn't see. So he's turned left, and then you see at the 200-metre mark, this thing falls off. It's the winker falling off, and then he goes, oh, and runs straight again and pisses in. And it was nearly the greatest. It was nearly the greatest disaster of all time.
Oh, I see. Now I get why you look like you look after the race.
Yeah. I'm thinking, I've told everyone I know to back this horse. It's going to win. I'm thinking it's not even going to start. And then when I saw the winker fall off, I'm going, no, here we go. So yeah, that was. So
you haven't answered any job advertisements for working in the stables lately?
No, I haven't. And look, I did buy the guy Angelo a nice carton of beer because if it wasn't for him, he was also a farrier. He had to get his farrier tools out to get the spare tyre off to actually get to the races. So yeah, it was a comedy, but it's one of those things you laugh about later. But that was my highlight of ownership for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, you were involved in every part of the race.
Every part of it.
Every part you didn't do was ride him.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was waiting for that to be the last bit.
Yeah.
You might have thought Ronnie Stewart, but I was actually...
he's a good man, Ronnie, and he sort of knew what was going on. But I actually had to go into the jockey's room and get his silks and all those sort of things. Yeah. And I thought, oh, well, something you learn every day. But
that's a stressful race day, that one.
It was a stressful race day, but it was a good day. Lismore was very enjoyable. Had a couple of days there.
We'll be back there this year.
We're going back?
We're going back.
Definitely.
Yeah, and I enjoyed it. They're a good bunch of people, absolutely.
So what are some of your favourite tracks around here? Well, how long have you been in Queensland for?
Moved back to Queensland in '97, so I've been back 20 years. 20 years now. Look, I used to love Eagle Farm. Hopefully it comes back. I believe it's on the way back. I used to hate Doomben. I never had an affinity with Doomben, but I've come to actually enjoy Doomben now. I think it's pretty predictable. Sunshine Coast is a great track. It's got an interest. It's a bit different. It's got a big camber in the middle. So if they put the rail out into a certain position, you just can't.
So it's got a crown, has it?
Big crown. So, big crown. Yeah, not a camber actually. It's got a crown in the middle. And you get on track and you have a look. It's really noticeable. And when they put the rail out to a certain position, if you're on the wrong side of the crown,
down the hill.
Yeah, it's not. The horse isn't balanced and they just can't win. So that's quirky and different. But
you spent a bit of time down the Gold Coast lately. Well, how's that go for you?
Gold Coast is great because it's predictable too. You know what the Gold Coast is going to be. And I think the more you go to a track, you know what to expect. Gold Coast, 99 times out of 100, the fence is no good. You can always normally run on. And I had a great run down there. It was a pain in the ass driving down there, but it was...
yeah, because it's on the other side, isn't it?
Yeah, the tipping was on fire down there.
It's about an hour. It's about an hour with Saturday traffic. It's the best part of 2 hours, so it was a bit of a pain in the ass, but it was... we had a good time down there, all the same.
Something the client might like to know is that are you just giving the top 4 lookers in the yard, or are you taking into consideration map and form as well with that information?
I try not to do, and I've talked to Mark about it before, I try not to do too much form because I think it can influence. I think a mounting yard guy is really there to look at what horse presents best. And Paul and I had this discussion last year when we were doing stuff together. He says, "Are you sure you're not subconsciously giving an extra tick to the horses that we've discussed?"
Yes.
And I thought about it later and I thought I probably was.
There is some sort of inherent bias,
I think so, yeah. You know, you look at a horse, you want it to look well, and then you go, oh yeah, it's not too bad. Whereas if you didn't have a thought on it, you go, it's only average.
Well, see, I think that's fantastic information for you guys out there, is that do your form on these Queensland races and then just give an extra tick if it comes through from the yard, because you've got to have both things together.
Oh, I think so, for sure. I mean, there's often and I listen on, you'll hear guys do a preview and that sort of thing, but you'll see the horse the next day and on its looks you think it just can't possibly win. Yeah. But if you just can't go there with a preconceived idea of how a horse is going to look. Yeah. You see them week in, week out, so you've got an expectation of what they look like and they either disappoint you or they look good. But yeah, I don't like to be influenced too much by someone else's opinion on what they think the horse is going to do.
Even though it's bloody hard to shake that, isn't it? Once you hear it, it's like it's there.
It's really hard.
It's in your head.
I used to religiously listen to the previews and that on the way to the races. I try not to now because I think that subconsciously gets into your head as well. So I just put something else on and do my own thing when I get there. But there's a group of us in Brisbane that go religiously to. Are there every meeting and that. And we stand around and have a chat about things during the day. So the social side of it's good like that as well. Some really interesting people.
Okay, so you've seen you saw a fair chunk of New South Wales and particularly Sydney racing, and you've now spent a long time deep in Queensland racing. What are some of the good things about Queensland racing in comparison?
In comparison, jeez,
we had a debate last night over whether Queensland racing is well placed for the future.
Yeah, I struggle to find anything that's better in Queensland racing than New South Wales racing.
Well, what do you like about the racing here?
Oh, it's simple. He knows the horses so he can back a winner and make money.
Yeah, look, I think you're
That's what it's all about.
Look, I'd like the races wherever I was going. I've never been to the races in Melbourne, actually. I've never actually gone down to Melbourne to be the races. But if I was going to Sydney every week, I'd be fine. If I was going to Townsville every week, I'd be fine. I enjoy the race wherever. But look, we're behind the 8 ball up here. Prize money's ordinary.
So that's from an owner's perspective?
Oh, yeah, I think from an owner's perspective, I know the trainers get frustrated too, and participants. People like to bet when there's better horses running, and we don't get the better horses because the prize money's not here. Like, for instance, like a Magic Millions sailor, 90% of those horses won't ever race in Queensland because the people that are spending $1 million on a horse aren't going to race it here because they're racing for $40,000 first prize. It's just the money's not here.
But you've got Waller like being quite aggressive as far as Queensland's concerned.
Yeah, he's secondary.
He's sending his second. He struggled a bit initially, but he's got it sus now. He's sent up a lot of his.
He's still racing for 60,000 on a Saturday. Well, the midweek prize money in Sydney's only 40.
Yeah, well, he's sending them up here. He's sending up like a lot of 2,000 metre horses and that sort of thing, and they're trifectoing races and things and up here. And I suppose for his group of owners, they're picking up maybe an extra 100 grand.
Big hello to Joey Vella, who is a RacingRant Goldie that is
He's had a couple of results.
Has he?
Queensland.
Yeah. Oh, well, not surprised. I mean, they dominate our stayers, and he's picking up for those horses probably an extra 100 grand before they move them on. So he's done it the smart way for sure. Yeah.
All right. So can't Queensland be seen as you know that's its sort of its place, because obviously further north you've got the horses that have been pensioned off forever.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So maybe Queensland racing is. I mean, it's still quite. The southeast Queensland's got a huge breeding aspect to it.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
And I imagine there must be a ton of horses trained on the Gold Coast, just going across the border to snip at the $20,000 and $30,000 races in New South Wales.
Well, that's something that a lot of them are starting to do. I know. Speaking to Ben Curry, he was looking to buy horses that were bobs that he could take into New South Wales because you take them to Lismore or Willumbo and that, and you throw the bobs bonus in. It's almost as much as winning a Saturday race up here. So they were doing that. I think Toby Edmonds probably does it a bit. And then you've got someone like Matthew Dunn who's just over the border, and he's made a great business out of all those northern New South Wales tracks. He targets them, and then he can take his horses down to Sydney for a highway if they're any good. Yep. So, there's certainly an area there. Look, back in the day, John Hawkes, when he was in the Cerise colours, he had a satellite stable up here. I mean, Golden Slipper winner, was it Guineas, I think it was?
Yep.
He had its first race start at Eagle Farm. So he used it like that, and the bigger stables have, I don't know, there was a rumour that Cummings was going to set up on the Gold Coast.
Well, I think it's important to have somewhere up here, particularly for spelling.
But what is the key to
spelling? It seems to me that horses improve. It used to
be the old thing, it used to be a bit of a given. If a horse spelled up here in winter, then he'd be, when the spring came around,
he'd be better.
Yeah, he'd be better. And Bart Cummings used to do it a lot. He had a horse up here going back, Never Undercharge, which was a really good horse. He bought up here and then he took it to Melbourne after that, and it was a star. So, I mean, obviously the weather's good.
Is that the key to it? I mean, like I'm curious as to whether the horses that come back from summer spells are different to the horses that come back from winter spells. And my theory is that if they're spelling in a warmer climate, well, they're not really spelling in a winter like the southern horses are.
Well, look, I think they come back. They're probably a little bit more advanced straight away. They've probably got a better coat on them and that sort of thing. Probably feeling a lot of it's attitude too. I imagine they're probably feeling pretty good about themselves.
What? Because Queenslanders are happy about themselves?
Well, we are, because we're bloody good, but it's also nice and warm, Mark. I mean, where do you want to be in winter? Do you want to be at Warrnambool, or would you rather be, on the Sunshine Coast?
But you make a point there that I might look into, because if you spell in Queensland, you'll be ready earlier on in your preparation. I'm obviously focused on Sydney.
Yep.
Well, if you spell in New South Wales, maybe it takes you an extra run to get that condition or hair off you or something like that.
Or extra trial or whatever. What is the key to the hair, the coat? What does it all mean? People, mounting yard watchers come back saying, it hasn't lost its winter coat yet or something like that.
Yeah, but that can also mean nothing. I mean, classic example was the horse last week. It's Somewhat. Now, he won the Hollandale last year, and he looked like an absolute skunk. He looked like he hadn't had a rug on him. His coat was really woolly and everything. And he looked the same this year. Actually, I thought he looked better this year. Last year he won, this year he ran terribly. So the coats, you do see some horses, they come into yard, and I'll go back to Good Standing. He was like, you couldn't possibly see a thoroughbred look any better. His horse, people say dapples and all those sort of things. Well, he had dapples on dapples on. He was just amazing to look at.
What are the dapples telling you?
They're healthy.
It's a glowing skin.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
like when you see someone, you're looking good.
Yeah, and you look at a person with a nice physical build. You know, you see a nice bird walking down the street, she's healthy.
And there's a glow about their skin.
Yeah, there is,
and
absolutely.
You definitely don't have that glow after a Betfair function the night before.
Yeah, it's a red glow. It's a reddish glow. It's a reddish glow. But, you know, some of them do come in and you'll see they look a bit dull in the coat. And I think that's probably not the sign that they're not really at their top. But when you do see a horse, and I think it's harder in Brisbane to get the difference because most horses are spending their existence in pretty good weather. So their coats are normally pretty good. Whereas you see the Sydney visitors come up and their coats might look a bit patchy, but still doesn't mean they can't run. I mean, one of the guys that brings his horses up here every year, Kathy O'Hara rides him, I always forget his name.
Jason Coyle.
His horses look outstanding every time they come up here. He brought Siren's Fury up here last year and a couple of others. His horses parade as good as any trainer I've seen. So he's obviously a really good conditioner of horses. I don't know if he's got the most expensive stock or what sort of thing, but
he got to, most of his horses settle back as well. So they're negative percentage. Well, they're low percentage horses in that sense.
Yeah, but he's certainly, as a conditioner of horses, he's as good as anyone I've seen. He's fantastic. Yeah.
So who have you learnt from, you know, in your travels? Like, do you have a group of people you talk to about the yard, or?
Yeah, it's a group. As I said, there's probably about 3 or 4 of us at the races here every weekend. Obviously, I work for a living, but 2 of these guys are professional punters, and we probably all stand together 20 minutes before a race and discuss them as they go around and that. And it's interesting that normally we've got a consensus of views on what we like and what we see, but every now and then they'll like something that I don't like and that sort of thing. But yeah, look, I like throwing around the questions to people and that. Like, an interesting one is I probably spend a little bit more time than they do looking at a horse's walk. Whether it's walking freely and that sort of thing. And I picked a lot of that up from watching Jenny Chapman actually on television. She does a lot of that in Hong Kong. She'll say, look, it's a bit, and I'll be watching, she go, looks a bit stiff behind, that sort of thing. When you actually look for that after a while, you get to see it. And you go, yeah, well, that's...
So can you even pick that up on the TV?
Oh yeah, you can, yeah.
She has a massive reputation.
Oh, she's good, yeah. And Paul and I have discussed this a few times. We think, you know, she's... I think she's on a pretty good wicket over there too, so she must be pretty good at it. But I think she is. She does, you know, she'll go around every horse in the yard and she'll say, you know, he's a bit stiff in front. And then I went through a period where I would watch her and I would mute it and then I'd play it back and see if I had the same sort of view as her. And once you started to watch a horse's gait and how it walked and that sort of thing, yeah, you can pick up a few little things. There's a couple of horses in Brisbane that have got a few quirks when they walk around. There's a horse up here that's got a fair bit of ability called Freddie Foxtrot. He was scratched at the barrier the other week, and as soon as it went round to the barrier and it played up in the barrier and they said it's going to be vetted, and I said it'll be scratched straight away because it wasn't walking properly. It almost looked like it had a limp. And straight away it was scratched, and they don't scratch anything at the barrier here unless it's dead. They send them around. They send them around no matter what, mate. I'll tell you, and then they get beat 800 metres and you say to us, what was wrong with that? He goes, oh yeah, I think he must have just pulled too hard early in the race or something like that. And you just shake your head and walk away. But it happens every week up here. But knowing that horse and what he looked like, there was no way they were going to let him run. So yeah, I spent probably the last 6 months doing a little bit more on that, focusing a little bit more on that. But I mean, you know what it's like, Gordo, when you go out to play a game of football. Some days you'd be sore in an area. You know,
well, massive.
Yeah,
massive. But you feel it, and the thing is, it mentally affects you as well, and I think it mentally affects the horse.
It affects their confidence for sure.
Whammy.
Yeah, I think confidence in a horse is a massive thing. I went to a lunch one day, and Peter Moody was talking about when he first went to Victoria, and he was the first one that started taking his horses to the bush for a kill. And I got talking to him after, and he said, "Look, people underestimate how important the confidence is for a horse. If they get a win." You can even see them in the stable the next day. They're walking around a bit, they're proud of themselves and that sort of thing. So factor that in a bit too. So yeah, look, it's like most things, there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle. It's a fascinating puzzle.
Yeah, and lots of ways to make money out of it as well. Everybody's got different angles.
Everyone's got a different angle. It would be boring if everyone had the same opinion too. I mean, wouldn't be a market.
Well, then every horse, every winner would be running around at $1.
Yeah, look, if you didn't have an opinion, there wouldn't be a market, would there? So, I mean, whenever all was right and whenever it was wrong. So, yeah, the great game, as they say.
It is the great game. Well, thanks so much for catching up with us today, Nick, because we've been meaning to catch you for a long time, and obviously our viewers and Goldies and whatnot have been wanting to know the man behind the man.
They're very entertaining, the ranters in the forum there. I have a chat with them every now and then on the app, and that's good. Yeah, so, good fun. Good bunch of people.
All right, thanks so much, Nick.
Pleasure.
Excellent.
All right, cheers. Thanks, guys. Thanks. Pleasure.